But he told us a lot about his family, reiterating, I guess, some of the craziness of working from home and having kids at home and all of that. But what was really interesting was that he actually revealed that he has been diagnosed with MS. And that was a big moment, mentally and financially and health well-being wise for him, obviously.
Bjorn, welcome back.
Thank you.
Another episode.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Hey,
good to be here.
Do you know where California waffles go when they want to go to the beach?
I do not.
San Diego.
Oh, I like Eggo waffles, actually. That brings me back to my childhood.
They're delicious. I almost felt like I needed to actually have that on screen in print in case.
Right.
So I had to really enunciate it. So I promised you weeks ago that these jokes were not going to get better. And I think I have delivered. You have delivered in spades.
Yeah.
Are delicious. In fact, I am totally into the frozen waffle thing because actually making waffles is way more effort than I ever remember.
I know. We were actually talking a little bit about an upcoming trip that we have, and we were trying to plan out meals. And I think my wife said, do you want to do French toast, waffles, or do you want to just do an easy breakfast? Yes. In our categorization, that is a hard breakfast as well.
Yeah. Even when you used to mix Bix quick, I would have a tendency to let them cook a little too long sometimes, and then you get the really crunchy ones. It's just nice to grab one of them frozen waffles and stick it in the toast and go.
Oh, man.
But Eggo, it's not a sponsor. This is just a free plug. I will say, if we're giving free plugs, the ones I've been using lately have been the Kodiak cake frozen waffles.
Oh.
I don't know if you've tried those. They're available at Costco, so they're pretty cheap. But to me, the Eggos are like standard waffle thickness, and the Kodiak cake ones are like twice as thick, maybe.
Oh.
So
sounds like a adult version of a frozen waffle.
Yes. Yeah. Rated M for mature. The benefit of it is they aren't as plate hungry. I feel like you have to stack your Eggos sometimes if you really want to have your fill of them. Anyway.
I'll have to check those out.
Yeah. So speaking of San Diego and California, I think we just got back from there, huh?
We did just get back from there.
Yeah.
No,
how did you enjoy our trip?
It was nice. It's looking back, it feels like a long time ago, but it wasn't very long ago. And it sure was nice to get into the California weather. I think
the weather is what makes it feel like it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
There's like a 50-degree difference between the beginning and the end of the flight.
Totally. But trip was great overall. We were at a conference out in Hollywood, California. Not a place I don't know if I have ever gone there, maybe when I was younger, but it's not really a place that I would necessarily go to visit just on my own. Maybe someday with kids or whatever.
Well, you were always working and doing movies and commercials.
Totally, I was so busy.
Different,
Being on the big screen. Now I want to just see the big screens. But I did enjoy it, actually. It was fun to get out on the Hollywood Strip and see the stars, and I took a bunch of pictures of different people that I know, and it was really a good time. It was about as I expected getting there. I heard the traffic is just unknown, essentially, and holy smokes, it's a lot different out there than it is where I live. I think it took me a solid hour to go like 15 miles from the airport or something, so maybe longer. I think you had that experience too. Yeah,
it's been a while since I've broken $100 on an Uber. And did that. Yeah. It's a place I can understand. It's like you hear complaints about LA traffic and congestion and all these things, but until you're there, it's hard to know. But once we got there, we ended up spending most of our time at the hotel, which was fun. And so the Emerge conference was put on by the Financial Health Network, which we're a member of. And so they do this big conference, and there were a lot of our peers and other companies there. And I wanted to actually talk about some of the things that we took away from the Emerge conference. It spanned 2.5 days, a lot of stuff, a lot of things packed in. We were up from dusk till dawn and beyond every night, and not just taking photos of Hollywood stars like on the ground. Although we saw some Hollywood people, which was always interesting. They saw us too, and I'm sure that they were like, they probably get bothered all the time. I don't want to bother them.
I don't know why they didn't come over. That was really strange. But
I appreciated it, though. They could probably see we were working on financial wellness. But I want to go through it chronologically because there are some things that I thought stuck out from the conference, and I wanted to get your opinion and kind of what you took away from it. First of all, let's start at the very, very beginning. We have a friend of ours, Brenton, who kicked off the conference. And he kicked it off with a personal story. And I think there were some interesting lessons or lesson to be learned from that, or at least think about it. He definitely got me thinking. I was wondering if you could talk about Brenton and his journey, and did he get you thinking, and what were your thoughts after that?
Yeah, so Brenton Peck's a friend of mine, of ours. He actually was our relationship manager a few years and has moved into a different role at the Financial Health Network, but he was the MC of the event, and so he got to go first, which is always interesting, I'm sure, but he did a great job. He just welcomed everyone, but then he jumped right into a story really about his journey over the last couple of years. But he told us a lot about his family, reiterating, I guess, some of the craziness of working from home and having kids at home and all of that. But what was really interesting was that he actually revealed that he has been diagnosed with MS, and that was a big moment mentally and financially and health well-being wise for him, obviously. And he walked us through step by step how he's been dealing with that in all those categories. So he talked about the costs of the treatments that he's been going through. He talked about the mental strain, which he was pretty honest about that. That has gone up and down for him. He talked about obviously just the medical part of that, and there's no cure for this. Thankfully, he's got a less aggressive form of it. So I think he's not feeling as stressed as others might in that category. But I think what he did a good job with was just bringing us into that story. And his whole point was that on the outside, he looks like I don't know how old he is, but he said a millennial. So probably upper end of a millennial, successful in his career, got a good trajectory, 2 kids, doing a lot of different things in this industry. And as a practitioner, we would probably prescribe certain things for him. We would just quick off the cuff here, it'd be like, he probably needs a financial advisor. He's probably doing well. He doesn't necessarily need some of the basic tools, maybe a place to do financial goals, but he just needs access to accounts and investment vehicles and that kind of thing. But then when he showed us the financial impact of what he's been going through, wow, it was insane. I don't remember what it was, but every quarter, 2 times a year, maybe something like that, they're paying thousands of dollars in medical expenses. And so he just said it's really not going as well as it might look like on the outside financially. And he talked about the mental strain. He talked about the health strain, obviously, bringing those all together. And he was trying to make the point that just because we might see someone on the outside looking a certain way, we really can only know what's going on when we get to know their story, when we actually meet them and get out there and dig into the details. So hard to do that with everybody, but it was a good point and a good takeaway that the more we can get talking with people, give them access to tell their stories, really help understand what they're personally going through, and then customize that offering to them, the better. Because general rules, general principles, general offerings can only go so far. And in his case, they wouldn't go very far because you wouldn't know that he's got this huge medical expense every 6 months that he has to pay. And that likely impacts almost every other area of his life. Very compelling story. He did a wonderful job. Probably the best story told the whole time, to be honest. So he knocked it out of the park, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was, for me, the most compelling one. And it hits home because it's a real story. And I might have the numbers wrong, but I want to say that his monthly out-of-pocket cost was anywhere from $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And maybe it was $2,000 or $3,000. But I think, like you said, one of the things that we deal with in our world is overlaying personas or segmentation. Sometimes we try to fit people into boxes and we kind of look at some of the macro. When we think about how we're measuring financial health too, a lot of that gets boiled down to a number. It's like your credit score, your financial health score, whatever. And his whole point, I think, and he was saying, are you building for me? When you are out there working on your programs, are you building for me? I think what he's saying is, are you building for who you think I am?
Who you think I am. Yeah, and you're right.
It hit hard because I think we struggle with this, right? We want to give customized advice and guidance to everyone. But in a practical sense, it's just not easy to do when you have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that you have to serve. And yet, the story he was telling was not so unique, such an exception. In fact, I know 3 people that have MS, young people, a friend of mine that I grew up with who's younger than me. And while the disease may be more rare than some others, having medical bills is not unique. I think it's half of the reasons for bankruptcy in America. In and of itself, it's certainly not that unique. And yet what are companies doing? What are organizations and agencies doing for people like this? And I think what hit home for me too is for people that are making a decent income and getting by and even putting money away in savings and still have a surplus and can live a good life. How many of those people could really absorb $2,000 of additional out-of-pocket expenses every month? Every month to get by. Not like we'll skip it this month because things are tight. But now all of a sudden that is just something that you have to do, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Sometimes I think I'm fortunate because, hey, we've got our budget worked out and usually we've got some cushion. But if you threw in $2,000 every month that I was obligated to, things would get ugly really fast. And it hit me for him, particularly because you want to do something. And in some ways, we're the people, as well as the peers that were there, who are tasked with doing something. And it really made me think all week. I've thought about it ever since. What are we going to do for some of these exceptions? How do we handle that? I don't really have a good answer, but I think for you and me, that was a really great jumping off point to think inside out about some of the things that we're doing and how we can customize it further. And I think we've got some really good programs. Our Google consultants work individually with people. So we do have some options for people that are dealing with something unique. But yeah, that was a great one. And I didn't want to just lead with the most interesting topic of the conference and say that the rest aren't as interesting. But that one probably hit me in the gut more than any of the other ones. However, I thought there were a lot of other really good topics that came out of the conference too. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, and I want to protect everyone's anonymity here, because we talked to a lot of companies while we were there, but we talked to a person from a very large technology company. They are working on offering and kind of reinventing what they are offering to their employees in financial services. And one of the things that came out of that, and we hadn't really had a chance to discuss it, is they have gone with this philosophy that is add in all the options. I don't know if this is sparking the conversation, but like instead of a lot of companies who might say, here are a couple financial institutions you can use, here are a couple of different health plans you can use, what they were skewing towards is offering a whole host of things, a big app-based kind of menu of items for their HR. And I wanted to see what you thought of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to be fair to them, we're learning about that too a bit. We have grown over time. We're looking at different things in our program too that we feel like is a part of that kind of menu. Get why they're doing it. I understand that because we've got all these different employees, all different situations like we just described with Brenton. Like we don't know exactly what's going on. We don't know what they're going to actually need. So let's go with kind of the more is better approach, and we'll be able to get out to all of these folks. If we look at, any sort of evidence on adult learning, adult actions, just even thinking about yourself and what do you do in your financial life? What makes you willing and able to take action with a tool? What's going to get you over the hump to try to start using a budgeting tool to track your financial goals, to talk with somebody? Usually it's not a million options. That can become analysis paralysis for most people, which is why most like 401k plans reduced the number of options. They started with a ton of options and they started to condense because no plan wants to give exact advice. They don't want to be on the hook for that, but they also don't want to have so many options that people just go, I have no idea, I'm not going to do anything, because that's also not what they want to have happen.
So that's where target date funds came from.
Exactly.
Handful of options.
Yep, exactly. So I don't know the exact research, but I have done adult learning. I've worked with people. I've now been in 3 different programs, and I've found more and more that people are looking for advice. And that doesn't mean investment advice or fiduciary advice. That means general advice, even just next step advice. Where should I go? Who should I talk to? Where should I put the next dollar? What debt should I pay down first? And these are not in the camp of a financial planner. These are in camp of a financial coach or a practitioner in the space. And so it often doesn't take a lot of options for somebody to actually start using something that's going to work for them. And so I would kind of argue a little bit against that mentality of having more and that's always better, unless you're going to work hard to serve it up to people at either the right time or segment it like we talked about. I feel like that's one of the better efforts you can do is figure out who are your people, where do they land, and do your best there. But I think you can create an even more flexible model now with some of the technologies out there, can recognize when people are not who they look like on the outside per the starting of the conversation, and get them to the best next step in a quicker way than forcing them to sift through it all and find what's best for them.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. And like I said, we didn't really have a chance to debrief about that conversation. This is really the first time we've come to talk about it. But my gut reaction was the same as yours, because I think there's this temptation, especially when you have new people coming in, maybe people from outside the industry, maybe people from a whole different discipline, that the assumption sometimes is more is better, more. And that with more, people will find exactly what they need or be more likely to adopt something or whatever it might be. And yet I feel like, just as a general rule of thumb, when I'm working with people one-on-one, it's really actually hard to manage more than 3 options. And it's not like a hard and fast rule. And sometimes there aren't really 3 options. Sometimes there's only 2 options. So maybe they're really similar, or maybe you have 3 options that are really different. But I think the human mind can kind of sift through that. You know, it's like when I look at software that I'm going to buy, or I'm looking at the difference between AirPods Pro, AirPods Pro 2, and, you know, and they've got the list. What I don't want is every type of headphone there, because I just cannot get through that. And I consider myself a fairly educated, smart person on it. What I like is a little bit of simplicity. Show me what the differences are so that I can at least make an informed decision, because again, progress, not perfection. I don't know that it's going to be the best thing ever that's ever been invented for me, but what I want is something that is going to work for me. And I fear that, like you were saying, that fewer people might participate, that fewer people might take action, that some people might just be intimidated by the breadth of information and just ignore stuff too. We'll see, and we'll see how their experiment goes. I hope it actually benefits people, and it could certainly turn the industry on its head a little bit and maybe give people new direction on stuff. But it was a really interesting, I think, strategic level decision that could have some pretty big consequences for the people it's trying to help. And they're all well-intentioned, but it would just be really interesting to continue to track that. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, continuing on the vein of technology, we also talked to another company, and I wanted to ask you about this. So they're a company that is building a technology solution, but one of the key people on their team that was here to me to be really help driving some of the decisions and providing the reasons for what they are building was a financial coach, someone who's been in financial coaching a while, been doing it a while. And what heartened me in some ways is how much she was brought into the conversation within this tech company. And I kind of wanted to ask you about that. What are your thoughts about at least this tech company appearing to really look to someone not with a technical background as a real driver of their product?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's not maybe the most common thing that we see out there. Almost like the technology is typically built and then maybe a coach is hired, but that's just a skill set that's hired. It's not really leveraged to actually influence the technology. So in this case, I'm encouraged to see that they know who their end customer is a bit, or at least they have a good idea of it to start, and they're still getting started here. But it was very encouraging to see that they know that a coach works with individuals, and that if they want to build language that sounds like a coach, which was a non-judgmental, motivational, great listener, accountable, expert level type person, they're going to the right person. So it was neat to see that they hired this person from a coaching background, like you said, and are basically giving this person somewhat free rein to create some of the different pieces of the app and the tool so that it really does sound like there's somebody on the other side. I think that's the key with any sort of a virtual coach or any sort of a tool that's attempting to be like that, is it can sound very chat body, if that's even a word. That
it is now.
Yeah, it is now. Chat body.
FYI, that is different than Chris Body, who we talked about in our previous episode.
I actually listened to him recently, and I enjoyed it. Even as a trumpet player, I liked it. But yeah, having it feel less like technology, more just like a conversation, right? You cannot miss the human part of the digital, right? And so they're attempting to bring this together and give someone more of a conversational approach to doing their finances, which is really awesome, because that is a way to scale what you're doing, but you don't lose the fact that people just want to talk to someone that's like them. They don't necessarily want to talk to an expert that's intimidating. They don't want to talk to a computer that sounds like a computer. And that's where I do think a coach can actually blend both of those approaches. And we've both done coaching and had that experience where you're just having a conversation with people. You're not trying to put your expertise on them. You'll bring it out if they need it, but you're trying to help them figure out what's going to be the best for their life. And we've both personally seen the results of that, and it's pretty neat. So the fact that they're going to try to scale this into a digital format, I think is really exciting. And I think leaning on the right person on their team to help them talk in a way that people can relate to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was refreshing to see that. And it's not necessarily like nobody else is throwing in their 2 cents or adding their input. But I think what I like is that there tend to be a lot of companies that kind of work from the top down. And for us, when we've been on the front lines, it's helpful to have research and some guidelines and some generalizations and things like that can help us frame up what we're doing and be better and find techniques that might apply. But when I'm on the ground, what I feel like is what you have to do is discover practical solutions. And I'm curious, does that come up in your conversations with people about appetite for the practical versus the theoretical?
Yeah, it has actually, I would say, a lot recently. And I don't know if it's always been there or if it's just now that there's more uncertainty in the world, people are just looking for actual tips to help them. Probably a little bit of both. But getting out there and hearing what employees, customers, members are actually worried about does seem to be quite a bit different than how experts in the industry talk sometimes. And I think there's a unique challenge there if you're trying to talk about big groups of people, right? It's hard to personalize it. So I think we both enjoy the fact that we get to work with individuals because we really get to see what matters to them and what are they going to use to improve their financial life. And it's not like a overgeneralized tip. I'm going to be able to give them something that will actually help them. And if it's in a coaching experience, we're going to work together to find that. So I do think leaning on your financial counselors, leaning on coaches, leaning on people working in branches, if you're part of a financial institution, that is a very important part of a good business because everybody wants their members, customers to be happy and stick with them. And so you should get as close as you can to the customers. You know what I mean? And there's even technologies to do user testing. We've used that in our program just to see what resonates, what doesn't. So helpful and pretty easy to do nowadays. And so I think we're really seeing the value of that in our own program, and it's helping us to determine strategy moving forward, just like it is in a financial assessment setting where you can take a guess based on national averages, or you could actually measure your people and see what they actually need to work on and then focus your attention there. That's another thing that we've done. It's the same concept. That's a little bit higher level than an individual basis, but it's the same idea that you're really learning what is actually the need out there, and then you're solving that need or that problem.
I think a lot of programs, and good programs, and programs we've been a part of, have really focused on the what you should do message as opposed to how to do it. And I think you even had recently a situation where someone came up to you and was asking about you doing some presenting and gave you some framework that I thought was pretty interesting. Can you?
Yeah, I was speaking at a conference and my presentation was at an employer level. So I was sharing about how to build a financial wellness program, building blocks of financial health, how to help your employees. And two interesting things happened. Again, I'm talking to an HR leader here who does wellness. And almost all the questions at the end were personal tips. So people raising their hand. Hey, I'm just starting off in my career. What tips do you have for me? Hey, what's your favorite personal finance book? So it's really interesting because I honestly was, did you listen to the presentation?
Should I do this retirement account?
Exactly.
They were all individual questions about their own situation. Yep.
Yeah. So obviously, the neat part about this industry is that all of us can do it ourselves and we can help other people too. So it's a win-win in that sense. But somebody came up after and said, hey, I've got a client I'm working with. I'd love to have you come in. But they really just want very practical tips and tricks. They don't want high-level programs or ideas. They just want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps on how to improve their financial health for maybe different situations. And so he was asking, do you guys do that? And I was thinking, yeah, that's what we're all about here. That was exciting that he was thinking that way, that he knew that end group wants actionable things they can just put into their life. That's adding value to people.
Yeah, I thought it was nice that there was that honesty because it's something we've been embracing, and it was, I think, good reinforcement for where we're going. And people can't see this now. We're talking about what content we're going to be putting out there. We're talking about some courses that we're putting together. And I think the thing that is unique about it is that it's going to be very practical. It's going to walk you through stuff. It's not going to be the same old, you should do this if you want to get there, that kind of level of stuff. It is going to take your hand and walk you through each step of some of these things that people want to do, whether it is increasing their income or buying their first house or getting their first insurance policies to cover their family or whatever it might be, right? We have a ton of topics that we are going to be pumping out content on. And I think we've built some courses in the past. And to me, what we're building now and speccing out now is probably the most granular and most helpful that I have ever seen from any program. So I'm really excited about it. It can't come fast enough, but that is in the works, and I'm super excited about that.
I am too. It's no wonder why this is so popular, right? Because if you just, as you're listening, whoever you are out there, if you think about,
he's talking to you.
Yeah,
right there.
Right. You in the red shirt. So I'll give you an example. I do not like working on cars at all. I don't know anything about cars. It's like the last thing on my list always. But if I was ever going to go somewhere to try to figure out how to do something on my car, because I can only do really simple things, where do most of us go? We go to YouTube and we find a video, and it's usually some mechanic in Florida who you can tell doesn't do videos very often, but they're just a down-to-earth person. I can relate to them because I'm, except for the mechanical part, and they're just doing a how-to walkthrough. We installed a trailer hitch on our minivan a few months ago, and we used a YouTube video, and it was just step-by-step, and it was the exact same equipment, exact same van, and we got it done and saved a bunch of money doing it. So it's a perfect example of where are we all going to get information, and it doesn't have to just be YouTube. It could be a course, it could be whatever, but we're going to places where we can connect with the person. They're not some expert that is too smart for us. And they give us step-by-step instructions, and they do it in a fairly short-form way so that I don't have to spend an hour watching this person do it. I can see kind of a quicker version of it. It'll probably take me an hour, or longer.
Well, and many experts are too smart for me. So if I'm telling you that these courses can help me, I assure you they can help you. And when Bjorn says he's not a car guy, it just means like, when you are taking out your engine to put in upgraded titanium connecting rods and pistons, you're taking the cylinder head out to be machined. He does not have a machine shop in his garage, so he subcontracts that out. Just understand that. But yes, all the other stuff he does from all the timing and putting in his own cylinder sleeves. So that stuff he would do it. So no, I totally agree with you. And the beauty of that, and I have not seen that video. I didn't know you put on trailer hitch. Hopefully there's something getting hitched to a trailer.
Someday.
Hitching it up to a star. But I agree. And I think that's why a lot of people use YouTube, because someone probably wanted to help someone else, or maybe they were going through it themselves. And so there's not a lot of fluff. It's just how to do it, right? And that is so much value, especially for someone who's never done before, right? And we've talked about how we want to be a place that helps people do something for the very first time, because that's going to be the scariest. It's going to be the most unknown. But once you do it, you don't necessarily have to master it. But once you've done it, you have done it. Once you have done it, it's not scary. It's been demystified. It's been ingrained in your brain. And now you're probably empowered to do it on your own. Lots of things that can come of that. So much more content on that. And look for our trailer hitch video and Bjorn's road trip videos here, where he's obviously going to be hauling something. So that'll be exciting.
How about a borrowed bike rack? Does that qualify, a borrowed bike rack?
Whatever it needs to be. That the family likes to bike, and you probably have 6 bikes maybe that you gotta.
We have a lot of bikes.
So on the outside is definitely the best. They are bulky. You don't want them in the car.
Yes,
exactly. For sure. Another tech lesson from the conference here. I want to talk about, I'm going to actually pull the name of the company here, and I think it was Zogo. Is that right?
Yep.
Zogo.
Yep.
And they had the founder there, and he had some interesting lessons. And I thought maybe you could kind of share some of the things that, stuck out to you, because in many ways he was really offering some practical advice for people. And I think for us as, consumers of information too, what works for us? What gets people results?
Yeah. It was the first time I'd ever heard him actually share the story of how Zogo got started. So first of all, the founder's 23 years old. So I don't know what you were doing at 23, but holy smokes, I was not starting an organization. Right. And he was in college, and he went to lunch and learn that a local bank put on. And he said the whole time, me and all my classmates were just on our phones texting each other, and they probably shouldn't have been doing that, but he just was reading the room and saw, wow, they don't care what this person has to say. And then at the end of the presentation, the banker or the educator said, and if today you sign up to become a member or a customer of the bank, we're going to give you $25 into a savings account. And he just said, I remember laughing with everybody that nobody's going to do this. Nobody's going to take them up on this offer. And he said that stuck with me, that everybody was on their phones and they were bored by the style of this education. And so that led him to create this app, which has done bite-sized financial literacy modules, essentially. And their big fun thing is they do the rewards-based system with an incentive, and they have pineapples that you earn as you complete modules. And they take you a couple minutes, maybe max, and they're on a whole host of different topics. And they're geared toward kind of Gen Z, millennials, but they have a bunch of adults, I guess, that use it. I think actually more adults use it than Gen Z, which I find that kind of funny. And they will give you those points toward gift cards to places that you want to shop. And so it's a very simple concept, but he was just talking about the bite size is the way to go, making it fun, incentivizing what people are doing. He even talked about they did a test on some video content and they hired a very high-end, very expensive, very produced professional to do a video. And then they had one of the people on their team just do a selfie with FaceTime essentially on their phone. And the person that on their team that did it on their phone got way more views than the highly produced. And so he just said, people want to be able to connect with someone that's like them, that's approachable, that isn't overproduced, not living a real life. And so that authenticity and that genuineness are things we're trying to do in our program. I hope that comes through. We're striving to be like that because that's just who we are too. But I think we want to connect with people. We want to hear the real stories. We want to help people in a real way. And they're doing that. I think they said they have over 1 million users. So they're doing a great job and they're working with a bunch of different organizations. So it was neat to just hear very practical tips. It was actually the last session of the conference. He was up on a panel and probably one of the more actionable and practical in just the truest sense, because that's all he was doing is just sharing the tips and tricks of the trade.
Yeah. And when he talked about how they have surprising numbers of adults that use this platform, and I think the host or the moderator even said he was on it and it was giving him HSA education and those types of things. I think it's funny because it's like, yeah, we're trying to make this fun for the younger generation, but as we get older, do you not like fun anymore? And I think about you've got family, I've got family, and it's funny when I talk to some of my friends and they're like, we took the kids to this dinosaur exhibit and there was animatronic, and I'll tell you what, I actually had a good time myself. It's funny when it's like the excuse is fun is only for kids. As adults, we're too highbrow to enjoy these trappings of entertainment for children. And yet we all like to be entertained. We all like to have fun. And so I just think it's funny when some of my adult friends seem to have to excuse it. Like, we took them to this concert and it was really good, actually, or whatever it was. Or the amusement park. We had a good time too. There was a lot of stuff for us. Yeah. And I just find it funny that a lot of times we remove fun out of the equation. And in fact, the presentation you gave hinged on don't forget the fun. Don't forget to make it interesting. We're not robots.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a really great point. I'm thinking of like a recent trip to the park with my kids. And typically when we go to the park, we basically drop them off and they go and find instant friends. And then they're just playing with the kids. But lately, some of my girls have wanted me to play chase or play tag or whatever. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'm not super excited to do that, but when I do it, I have a lot more fun and I actually really enjoy it. I'm running around and playing. And that's been, I think, something that's been studied for adults is just the importance of play. But I've seen it pop up here and there that just for mental health, and I don't even need to make it sound, I think we all know that we like to have fun and we like to play around, and especially joking around. I like to joke around with friends. So any of that is really healthy for all of us. And so they have a secret sauce in this tool where you hear, oh, a financial literacy app, that sounds boring, but he's the pineapple man. They've got pineapples. Like, it's fun. It's easy. You can earn money. They've tapped into some of the key things that keep people engaged. And I think the key fact is that you can come and go as you want. You don't have to finish it all to get stuff. You can, I think, stop and come back to it. And for busy people, I think you got to have some flexibility, but I think they have that and it's working out super well for them.
I have been joke-free since 99. I said if we can get out of the Y2K mess unscathed, I will swear off jokes forever. Yeah, we all like to have fun. I like to have a good laugh sometimes, too. I thought we would end on one last discussion here, and it was, I would call her the keynote speaker. Her name was Jessica Bruder. I believe she's the author of a book, or it was actually a magazine series, I think, that then she turned into a book, which then got optioned into an Academy Award-winning movie by the same name, I think, Nomadland. I've actually not seen the movie, but they had a lot of images from it. And this is a story about minimalism. Could you explain what the idea of Nomadland is?
Yeah, she wanted to follow a group of people who, like you said, have basically, I guess whether purposely or maybe a little bit because of things that have happened in their life, chosen to live on the road and live off of, I think it was like $500 or less a month or something like that. It was very inexpensive life, traveling around. And for a number of these folks, this is like an intentional thing. It may have been prompted by I lost my house, I lost a job, whatever. It could be something bad. They're actually now moving in groups across the country, essentially, and living a super cheap lifestyle. And I don't know, she was trying to get ingrained in what that was like. And so she described how she, in some cases, she was trying to be known as the journalist and observing. And in other cases, she was like undercover to actually like be in there experiencing what these people are going through so that she wasn't viewed as somebody different. And it was fun to hear her talk through the challenges of that and how it was pretty tricky, actually, to be undercover, to not be looked at as different because people would shut down then. And when she was able to go undercover, how much people opened up. And it sometimes took a little while to build that trust with people because they were still a little skeptical. But she lived in a van. She traveled around a bit. She definitely slummed it. And then she really had to...
Van's name was Halen.
Halen, yeah. And didn't the lady say, why not Morrison? Why not? I'd ask the same question. Good question. I almost actually felt bad for her because they asked her if she got to go to the Oscars the year that it won. And it was 2020 or 2021, and they only allowed, I think, 170 live attendees. So of all the years, they didn't have the big theater open. It was just the real stars. And she said, I was here and I was local, but I was just getting everybody else ready to be at the event. And then she got to watch it on TV probably.
Definitely a first world problem.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Oh, bummer. But she did a great job of explaining a little bit of a snapshot of what that's like. She shared a few stories and it was intriguing because on the outside, again, to connect back to the first story a little bit, on the outside, you might look at this as, I don't know, people to stay away from or people that have ended up in this situation and they can't get out of it. But I think she was making the point that they're choosing to do this and they're actually quite creative in how they live like this. And they've found extremely interesting ways to keep their cost of living way down and to be able to do this.
And how freeing is that? I know we've talked about geo arbitrage and moving somewhere or retiring somewhere where the cost of living is much lower. It's funny because I follow a number of YouTubers and hashtag van life has been around a while. And as I was saying, I have not seen Nomadland, but I felt like I had a pretty good understanding from watching these people who are intentionally living with almost no financial footprint. They live in a van. They shower at a local rec center or wherever it is. They have a job. They have a Wi-Fi card or they go to Starbucks. It's not like they're totally cut off of life. And you would think some of these people answer questions from people that are coming in. Why do you do this? Do you not have enough money? You could get an apartment. You could settle down. Some people just want this. They want to see the change of scenery. They want to see America. They do not want to have to worry about if they can or can't pay their bills. So there are people who embrace this, and I understand that to some extent. Obviously, in many ways, I'm the antithesis of it. I think we've both seen the movie The Minimalist. I think that's what it was called. Curious, is there anything about that intrigues you or is alluring to you in any way? Did it get you to think about the money that you spend, even if it doesn't seem like a lot? It certainly would seem like a lot to some of these people that are living in vans and being a part of that whole community that lives on the road.
I do think that the part that intrigues me is just the freedom component of it, where you're not being forced to have to maintain a certain image, lifestyle, perception, whatever it is. And so even when I watch like the minimalism movie, I got excited about the idea of just having less stuff. I'm not sitting here each day thinking about all the stuff I have in our house, like all the stuff that's in the basement, all the boxes, the things we never unpacked in the last many years that we've lived here. I'm not thinking about that ever. But there are times where I do feel the weight of that. And I do feel the positive side when I sell stuff that I have. I feel really excited about that. So even if I don't think about it, there's clearly some sort of a weight that's there, because the amount of positive feeling I get when I sell it and it's gone out of my house, there's something going on there. Even if I don't actually realize it, there's something happening in the background. So that's one part. And then I think just the fact that when we talk about paying off debt, like just if everybody listening, if you have a mortgage, how would you feel if your mortgage was paid off today? How would you feel? Or how would you feel if all your debt was gone? Wouldn't you feel different? Wouldn't you feel your opportunities in your life now have totally changed? Hopefully you've got some more money to put to other things, but you would also feel, I think, less strapped down or held on to by the minimums of your life, like the necessities. If those continue to creep up every time you make more money, if you get the lifestyle creep thing going, or you just have expensive tastes and you've kept that standard so high, that also makes you less able to handle the shocks that come into life too, which all of us are going to have something happen. We probably already have had something happen. And so your cushion is maybe not there. And hopefully even if you do have an expensive lifestyle, you've got a big cushion too. You're still living below your means. And these people have mastered that. So even though there are trade-offs, I'm not sure I'm ready to sign up for living in a van and going on the road and we got the hitch. That's a good point. Yeah. I don't know too many people that are hauling the boat, but they have a certain amount of freedom that most of us don't have. If we're going to keep paying the mortgage and keep saving for college and keep saving for retirement, got to keep working, got to keep making money, and in the same way or higher always. You know what I mean? For most people, it's the same way or always higher. It's never lower. And I think we both could say it is super hard to think about decreasing your lifestyle. It's very easy to increase it, but it is really hard to decrease it. So unless it's some shocking event that forces you to do it, it's amazing that some of these folks have been willing to keep it lower. But I imagine that they have a huge sense of positive freedom, mental freedom, all these things that they feel on a regular basis that they probably would never want to go back. They probably would never want to go back to the chains of a certain lifestyle.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As I thought about it, there were moments when I thought, when we have worked with people and they're in a dire financial situation, and you look at it, and sometimes a lot of it's just self-made problems, right? I've got this car payment here. I've got this country club membership. I've got a vacation house and the property taxes, and my business is going down. And yet you look at all these things, nothing was forced on you, right? So a lot of people voluntarily took on these obligations, and it's causing them stress. And you think, as an outsider, you're like, why did you take these things on? Why not shed them? You can get rid of them. And I've been, fortunately in my life, at below zero in net worth to positive numbers in net worth. So I've had a huge swing over my life. And I can remember times when owning a car was a pipe dream, or owning a home was a pipe dream. I even remember when we really bought our first house, me being reluctant to do it because I was married at the time and we were thinking, hey, we should upgrade to something a little bit bigger. But the reality is we were in a comfortable place. It was well within what we could afford. And I was like, oh, do we really want to leave that? And we didn't necessarily need to. But as you said, it's so easy to get into you're doing better, or you need more space, or I don't want to raise my kids in a small house or in this neighborhood or in this school district, or whatever the reasons might be. And I'm not discounting any of them. They're all totally valid. But when you look at some of these people, and like you said, the freedom that they don't have to worry about, did this bill get paid? Did this membership get paid? And she kind of talked about what are some of the big problems they have. It sounded to me like governmental problems, like getting mail, or having a address, or having your social security number verified, or it seemed like really government things, whereas assuming they didn't need any of that, they could totally be free and were finding their community. And I wonder, because there were times when I was happy with no money, and there were times when I was really stressed about having no money as well. But you wonder, when you don't have any of those ongoing expenses. You don't have any of those burdens, any of those liabilities. Your net worth calculation is very easy because you can just look at how much cash do I have in the can, whatever it might be. How freeing would that be? Sure, you got to worry about some stuff and health risks and all these other things, but there was a surprising amount of community, one, where these people would get together, share ideas. She even talked about a town that they all knew where there was like free dental care. So
yeah, that's right.
It just became this hub for van life people to get dental care, that businesses are embracing it. I think a fairly large company had like a parking lot where these nomads could park and live and then come into work and then basically live in the parking lot. So it was really interesting. And part of me thinks about that because ultimately, when a lot of people are looking for that freedom from stress, right? That financial freedom, we talk about being financially independent. We're trying to get that nest egg number, that total number to work on our current income. And yet, just like when we talk about side hustles, raising your income, you can work on this side of the equation to bring down this side. I bet many of those van life people would say, man, if I had what's in your 401k right now, I would be set indefinitely. And some people would probably look at it and be like, oh, this isn't even enough to get me to think about retiring on time. So just totally different perspectives, pulling different levers. Definitely got me thinking. Obviously, it's not for everyone. But like you said, sometimes I think a lot of people will look at people like this and think it's on the fringe. And sometimes there are really good lessons that you can just take from these groups. You don't have to necessarily embrace it all, but it helps everyone rethink a little bit. The Emerge Conference in California, we got some great weather on it. We spent a lot of time together. Any final thoughts on things that you picked up, people you met, anything that you took away from it that you want to share?
I think just being in the same spot with a bunch of other people that are doing this work, there's just something about that cannot be replicated online. It really cannot be replicated in a lot of other ways. And even if we went to most of the sessions, we didn't go to every single one of them, but just the creative energy, I guess, that's there when you're in that moment, you're away from your normal day-to-day, so valuable. I feel like we got some really good nuggets in our own conversations. We chatted with a ton of different people, made some great connections, furthered some connections. Hands down, one of the best things we get to do all year is being in those kinds of settings. So thankful that we got to go. It was nice to be in California too. So glad about that. But
hopefully they'll pick a nice place for next year. Yes,
exactly. I'm sure they will.
But yeah, I agree. And I think you will be at Emerge next year. So if you're interested in joining Bjorn there, you can certainly do that. But I totally agree with everything you said. It was just nice to hear about what's working, what's not. And hopefully we shared some ideas with people too that they can take back and use in their own programs. But that being said, we have emerged from California equipped, energized, and with lots to think about. And sometimes not with an obvious solution, but it helps us continue to think and press our thinking forward on how we're going to help you with your life and your money.
I like it.
So
I think that was the best joke you've had so far. We've emerged. Nice. Nice. You're coming back. You're coming back. Really, you're emerging.
Set the bar too high at the beginning. But that's it. So we will see you guys next time and look forward to joining you on the next step.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.